Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the beautiful Foundation building here in Carlsbad, New Mexico, and to a program that we call the Faces of Carlsbad. We're sponsored by Intrepid Potash, and this is a program in which you will meet people that you might know, people that you might not know. And by the time we're through with the wonderful interviews that we've been doing through the years with all of these lovely people, you're going to say, I know them, I've seen them somewhere before. And today, we have a very lovely lady, Marie Johnson, who is our guest. Marie, welcome to the Faces of Carlsbad.
Well, thank you for having me.
Now, in this program, basically, we bring forth a little bit of your background, where your family originated from, where you grew up, and then we go on to find out what you're doing now and what you do in your spare time, and if you have any spare time. You know how that
Yeah. Well, I don't have any spare time, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
Well, let's see. I am from Houston, Texas, and I tell people I'm one of the very few native Houstonians. I was actually born there, but my mother's side of the family is from Louisiana, and she sort of broke rank and married a man from Texas. So
that was disgusting.
So I'm a first-generation Texan,
Uh-huh.
and I came to New Mexico. I tell people I wasn't born, but I got here as fast as I could. And my email address is Blue Sky. And I taught at the university here, and it was Blue Sky, nmsu.edu. Still is, by the way, if you need it. And that's why we're here. We escaped Hurricane Katrina. We came the year right before Hurricane Katrina.
Oh,
Katrina
my
hit.
goodness, yeah, that was a horrible thing, too. You were very fortunate. Yeah, you graduated from Houston High Schools, down to one of the Houston High Schools?
Yes, James Madison High School, and it was an M&M transfer. And that's interesting. Let me tell you why they call it M&M. It's called Minority to Majority because I graduated in 1976. And at that time, Houston was sort of trying to do integration. So what they were doing is they were busing the minorities to a school that had a majority. And at that time, James Madison, which was outside of the Astrodome, outside the Loop, was all white. So I was one of the few minorities to go to James Madison Senior High. Because I was originally zoned for Jack Yates, which was a traditionally black high school.
Now, see, I went the opposite way. No, I'm going to tell you, seriously. I've been working with the Martin Luther King organization for 10 or 12 years now. And 10 years ago, I was talking to Julie Williams, Captain Williams' lovely wife, and we discussed family backgrounds, and I said, well, I never had a brother or a sister, and she looked at me and she said, well, you've got one now.
Aww.
So she became my sister, and Troy, who's her grandson, he's my nephew.
Oh, that is so
Yes,
sweet.
and I just feel like I couldn't have had a more wonderful sister.
Well, I had a really good experience. I went to James Madison High School, and then after that, I went to University of St. Thomas.
Where's that located?
That's on Montrose Boulevard.
Okay.
Between Richmond and Alabama.
Yes.
And it's a Catholic school. I was raised Catholic. My family's from Louisiana, so my name is Marie Antoinette. My grandmother is Laurice Marie. My mother is Sophie Marie. And my great-grandmother was Alexandria Marie.
Wow.
So I come from a long line of Catholics.
And very famous names.
Well, now I've grown into it, but I hated it because my mother, like I said, married a man from Texas. And his last name was Raspberry.
No, wait a minute. Raspberry? Is that right? That's funny. I love that.
So it's Marie Antoinette Raspberry. Let them eat cake? What kind of cake? Raspberry cake. I hated the name. I hated it, but I've kind of grown into it now.
Yeah.
And we were the raspberries that dropped the P. So we're Rasberry.
Raspberry.
And when we had a family reunion a couple of years ago, I asked one of the older adults, relatives, and she said they got mad and they just dropped the P. So nobody knows now because what they got mad at, but that's why I'm a raspberry without a P.
Oh, I'll be darned. Now that's
Doesn't sound right.
That's good. That's good. I love it.
Oh well.
So anyway, you graduated from the high school and you went on to the college, and then where did the journey start?
Well, I tell people in my past life I was a lawyer, and I still am a lawyer. I'm licensed in the state of Texas and Federal District Court, Fifth Circuit. And what happened was I was an economics major, and I went to work for Prudential, and I was in the contract department. And so I was the person who said, well, if you put the comma there, you're excluded. And so the legal department would have me testify in cases, and I would come back and I'd say to my coworkers, I thought lawyers were supposed to be smart. I could do this. And that's how I ended up being a lawyer.
Oh, and that got you interested in that. And what kind of law did you deal with?
Well, I have this really strong sense of justice, so I wanted to do law that affected people. So let's say I was a people's lawyer. I did family matters, domestic disputes. I was general practitioner. But prior to becoming a lawyer, I was a law clerk. And I clerked at Gulf Coast Legal Foundation. And then I clerked for a very famous person that you may not know. His name is Anthony Griffin. He's an African-American lawyer out of Galveston, Texas. And he was one of the lawyers for the NAACP and the ACLU. So I became involved with the ACLU in Texas. As a matter of fact, I was a board member for the Texas ACLU section.
Isn't it nice, though, that today 99% of us we get along beautifully together?
Well, it takes an effort. And that's why I was so excited when you asked me to come on, because one of the things that Martin Luther King talked about was this sort of, we either need to live together as brothers or we perish as fools. That's one of his
Oh, I love
quotations.
that. Yes, that's a good one.
So you're right. It takes work and it takes a commitment to do that. And the other quote that I like, that he said, it was like, and I may be misquoting him, but it was better, he chose love rather than hate because hate was too great a burden to bear.
Yes.
So I think I kind of modeled my life after that. He was a follower of Gandhi. I follow Gandhi. I just believe that I guess, like I said, I had a strong sense of justice. So once I clerked and got my law license, I went into private practice. And I was in private practice for a while, and then I worked for Harris County Children's Protective Services.
Oh, yes.
And our motto was, we take babies from their mother. No, I'm just kidding. We don't take babies from their mother. So then, but I was representing battered and abused children.
Yeah.
And then I left. That got to be really, you can only do that for so long. And then instead of going into corporate law, what did I do? I went and worked for Gulf Coast Legal Foundation. And now I was defending the people whose babies were taken. So I've been on both sides of the...
So you've seen it all.
Seen too much, which is why I don't practice law anymore. I just burned out.
Well, you know, talking about Martin Luther King and just recently Nelson Mandela, and I thought to myself, here's a man who spent all those years in prison, and he came out, and you would have thought with all that bitterness, the anger would be there, but it wasn't. He was just like Martin Luther King. He wanted to bring people together peacefully, and he did a remarkable job.
Well, you know, and he studied the sit-ins, and he studied Martin Luther King. He was a follower. He was a great admirer. Yeah. And I'm a great admirer of Nelson Mandela. As a matter of fact, I think my youngest was 6 weeks old, and my oldest was about 14 months old, and I marched in Houston against apartheid. I had, as a matter of fact, one of my friends, Delord Parker at Shea Community Center, videotaped it and said, I want to show them that their mother was an activist. But I was one of those people with the stroller in one hand and the baby pack standing, and the Houston police at that time, it wasn't like, oh, well, they're not going to bother you. They were coming back from a really pretty bad reputation. I had a friend of mine that was in graduate school at the medical center, and he was interviewing people and asking them, you know, what was your method of, have you ever considered suicide, and what method? And one guy said, I have, and he said, well, what method? He said, I was just going to give the finger to a Houston police cop.
Oh dear.
That was his.
Oh dear,
That's how bad the police were in Houston.
That's sad. That's sad.
So anyway, it was a scary thing, and it was a brave thing when I think about it now, that I was there with a lot of other people protesting and marching against apartheid. So, but when you're young, you don't think about you putting yourself in danger.
No, no.
Oh,
No.
I think they might have taken my babies from me.
Well, you know, and in all families are like that. That my dad would always say, quit acting so stupidly.
Mhm.
Straighten up and fly right, you know.
Well, what I've discovered is that when you're younger, you have this really, and I did, this strong sense that there was this line. It was black or it was white.
Mhm.
But as I've gotten older, I see shades of gray. And one of the women that I was able to meet was Sarah Weddington, who did Roe versus Wade.
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
And one of the things she said was that we get tired of fighting the fight, and you pass the baton over to the next generation. You pass it over to the younger people,
Right.
because you can't keep doing it. She says you have to laugh, because you get more oxygen laughing.
Mhm.
So I'm proud to say that I did pass the baton over. My youngest is in Albany. Well, he's in Troy at Rensselaer Polytech, and he was one of the organizers of, the Troy, what was it, the thing on Wall Street, Occupy. He was
yes.
Occupy. He was
Yes.
Occupy Albany. He was one
Yes.
of the facilitators. So my husband and I got to visit him in all his glory facilitating. And it's like, wow, I remember this. And the weather was cold and it was raining and they were well organized and I was so proud of him. But I'm so old. I said, babe, I've done this marching. Can I just go back to your house and lay in a nice warm bed? Because they stayed out there.
Yeah, we're talking about Albany, New York.
Albany, New York, and we're talking, I think it was like September, October, so it was still cold and it was wet and it was rainy. And I said, I've done this and I pass the baton on to you.
Yeah.
Now, give me the keys to your house so we can go lay in your bed.
Well, tell us a little bit about your family, your children and your husband.
Well, we have a blended family. This is my second marriage.
Mhm.
Paul Johnson, and he's an attorney. And that's an interesting story. He was in the building, a friend of mine, when Contract for America, remember when Newt Gingrich and the Congress came in and they did Contract for America?
Yes.
Well, I was working for Legal Aid, and at the time, Legal Aid is a legal aid services corporation under sort of the envelopment. It's not a government, but it's sort of like this sort of nebulous under the umbrella. So they lost a lot of their funding because we were labeled anti-family because we were getting divorces for women. But what people failed to realize was that we only took divorces when there was abuse involved.
Yes.
There was some sort of either physical, emotional, or sexual abuse involved. So do you really want people to stay married under those circumstances? But nobody saw that part. The funding got caught, and then I ended up without a job. So the building that I went to work in, my husband happened to work in it.
Oh, I
So-
see. Yeah.
And 17 years later, plus, we're married.
Well, that's wonderful.
So
That's
we've been married a long time.
Now, you got involved in schools, I understand. Are you involved in any schools at all?
Well, I'm involved in education. Like I said, it comes back from that sense of justice. And one of my mentors, or one of the people I admire, is Bell Hooks. And she said, if you want to destroy a civilization, you want to destroy people, you take away their writing and their art, another language and art. And so to me, if we're going to change the world, we're going to do it through art, and whether it's visuals, performing, and writing.
Yeah.
And so I came here, and I don't know, remember Melissa Gish?
Yes, I do.
Well, Melissa Gish was at the college. She's a writer.
Mhm.
And I was trying to mind my own business. I was trying to blend in. This is the witness protection program. So I was trying to hide,
The witness protection.
Yeah, that's what my family thinks, because I'm out here in Carlsbad instead of Houston. And so my husband said, oh, my wife's an artist. And so they had the first women's conference here, and I spoke. And the topic was, I still remember it was, why are there no women artists? And so we talked about women in art. And so that's what I do, and that's what I've been doing the last couple of years since we've retired. I've been teaching workshops, but the workshops have been on diversity, but mixing in art. Multiculturalism is something I'm very, very interested in.
Yeah.
So this past summer at the museum, they have a new museum director, Mr.
Mhm.
Morgan, Dave Morgan, I think
I
his
think
name.
that's, yes, I think it's Mr. Morgan.
And so I taught a printmaking class, and for a week, every day we visit a different country. And we didn't visit a European country. We visited Africa, we visited Asia, we visited Australia, New Zealand, and we studied their art. And we put out a big map every week, and the kids got to point at where this country was.
Mhm.
And we talked about their art, and we made their art, we did prints. And they really connected with it. They did journals, and at the end, the question I asked them with the journal was, you have to pick a place. Look at this map, walk around it, pick a place that you'd like to go that you've never been, and why. And so I just get really excited about that.
That's interesting. And talking about different cultures, I've been to New Zealand,
Mm-hmm.
and the Maoris are the cultural natives who've been there ever since people were there.
Exactly.
And then, of course, I read a lot of these books on Australia and the natives who were there long before the white man ever came to that beautiful country.
There's an excellent movie dealing with that issue. It's called Rabbit Proof Fence. If you haven't
I haven't
watched
seen it. No, I
It's
haven't
a
seen it.
really
Rabbit
good
Proof Fence.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I read a mystery writer about all of a sudden, does your mind ever go blank?
Yes.
Anyway, this detective his father was British and his mother is native.
Mm-hmm. No, I don't know. That was.
Inspector.
I was thinking of the one. What is it? The McCall. He does the number
Yes, he
one.
does South Africa.
He does South
Yes,
Africa.
yes.
I started drinking the tea because of him. It's wonderful tea too, because he talks about the tea that's in there.
Oh.
And I can't remember. I'm having a senior moment too. I can't
Well, no,
remember.
my wife really likes his writing. I do too, but I'm in so many different art writers right now, I can't keep up with them all. But he does an excellent job.
Mm-hmm. Of sort of laying out the land. And one of my favorite writers, and it's funny you should mention this, is that a friend of mine was showing me some pictures from her trip to Africa. And I started talking about, it reminded me of Ant Hills of the Savannah. He just died recently, Chinua Achebe.
I'm not familiar with this.
Wonderful writer, but he did Ant Hills of the Savannah. And when I used to go, New Mexico's catching up, but back when I practiced law, legal aid, I would go speak to law enforcement and educate people about what is domestic violence. And one of the things that I used to quote from Chinua Achebe, because when you're working with people who are in the cycle of abuse, the statistics say it takes them at least 6 times before they'll leave that abusive spouse. So lots of times people go, well, why do you even do it, Marie? Why do you even represent these people when they're just going to go back to their spouse?
Listen, yeah.
And so I would quote Chinua Achebe, and it's from Ant Hills of the Savannah. And it's a wonderful story. I have to tell you the story. What happens is that one day there's this road that man and beast go down, and you see the footprints, and you see the tire tracks, and you see all the dust, and you see the casualties. And so one day this tortoise is going down this road, and this lion jumps out and says, prepare to die. And the tortoise says, I know you're king of the jungle, and in your magnificence, I just ask you one request. And the lion's like, yeah, I'm king of the jungle. What do you want? He said, just a minute. And he goes and he makes this big circle, and dust is everywhere. And then the dust settles, and the lion says, you know I'm going to kill you. He says, I know, but at least when the other passers go by, they'll know it was a struggle.
Oh.
And that's why,
oh.
that's what I would tell the groups.
Yeah.
That's why I do what I do, or did what I did. So right now it's all about education. And just getting people to be sensitive about that. Because getting back to what we were talking about, Martin Luther King and Nelson Mandela, one of the other reasons why I do what I do is because of the very famous Lutheran pastor, Martin Niemöller. Is that how you pronounce his name? Yeah. When he said first they came for the socialists. And I wasn't a socialist, so I didn't speak up. And then they came for the trade unionists. And I wasn't a trade unionist, so I didn't speak up. And then they came for the Jews, and I wasn't Jewish, so I didn't speak up. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me.
Oh,
So
my.
that's why I do what I do, because
That's
I think we have to speak up. We
We
have to.
do. There's no doubt about it. Now, you attended the Martin Luther King March recently, didn't you?
Last year.
Last year.
This year we didn't.
Yes.
We didn't attend. We travel a lot. As a matter of fact, We have, my family gave us this nickname, they call us road lizards.
Road lizards?
Yes, because we're always on the road, crossing the road. And so, as a matter of fact, we're going to be here for about 3 more weeks, and then we leave for the Bahamas, warm water.
Oh, that's nice down there.
Wish us luck, guys. I hear that there have been a couple of sick people on the ship.
Cruise ships, yeah, on this one cruise ship, but you never know. I've been on quite a number of them, and I've never gotten sick.
Well, I'll tell you, like my grandmother, who was, and I love my grandmother. Her English was not her first language. She spoke Creole.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of times when she would try to tell us something when we were a kid, it didn't always translate into English.
Yeah.
But one of the things I do remember she said is, "What's for you, you're gonna get it."
Oh dear.
And so I used to say, "Well, what if it's for me not to get anything?" And she'd look at me and say, "Then you won't get it."
She was a feminine philosopher.
She definitely was.
Oh, yes.
Yes. She had a lot of sayings. And the thing about it is that my kids are older, and my youngest, the one in Albany, called me up the other day and he said, "You've given me the curse." And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Now I'm quoting Grandma."
Oh, isn't that amazing?
So,
You've been quite an influence on your family.
yes, I think so. But I think it's more by action rather than telling them. Because I think that's the way we learn. You can say, "I love you," but if your arms are like this, then what are you going to pick up if you're a kid?
Yeah.
You're going to pick up, you said that, but you're not acting like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe in justice, so I march. I believe in speaking out, so I speak out. Now I believe in passing the baton. So now I get to rest.
What do you do in your spare time, usually?
I garden. I was in the farmer's market last year, which was a really rough year with the drought. And according to all the statistics, this is going to be another rough year.
It's going to be a bad one. Yeah,
It's gonna
that's
be a
what I
bad one.
hear.
So one of the things I do, I haven't given up gardening, but I'm moving to drought-tolerant plants.
Mm-hmm.
And I call it only the strong survive garden. Baby, if you didn't get any water, you didn't live, tough. Only the strong survive.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good philosophical point.
Well, one of the things too is that, and my family can't get over that I actually live in the desert, and we've been in Carlsbad now almost 7 years, in New Mexico 10. Is that I love it here.
Yes.
And I think you either love it or you hate it. And they just think I've just lost my mind. So I tell them I'm in the witness protection program because, we're way out here, we're isolated. You don't come to Carlsbad unless you come into Carlsbad. Because it's not like Las Cruces where it's a crossroads.
Yeah.
It's, the bats leave. The Butterfield Stagecoach stops at the Guadalupe Mountains, and it turned around. So you come to Carlsbad because, and there's something about it. I've had people come and go, and I just say, I've had the internet, the UPS guy, the FedEx guy, they're my best friends,
Mm-hmm.
and we travel.
Yeah.
And so this is our home base. And my in-laws are from Wisconsin, and we talked to them on Sunday, and it was a minus 18 or 15 at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
Wow.
And I felt embarrassed because I was like, it's 33 here, and I'm so cold. So
I know, that's the fascinating thing. The weather is very strange this year. We've got all those strange winds blowing down. That's why New Mexico is suffering from a drought. It's been missing us, but hopefully things will change. But anyway, you brought up some good points. These people living in the northern states and the eastern states and even Alabama and North Carolina and
did you see Atlanta?
oh my goodness, it's
my
unbelievable. Yes.
Well, the thing about it is that I grew up in Houston. I never thought I'd leave Houston until I met my husband.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people would complain about humidity, I didn't know what they were talking about.
Yeah.
Because that's all I knew until we went camping in Big Bend, and there was low humidity, and I went, oh, this is what people are talking about.
Yes.
So now, this is what I tell people. If you want to know what humidity is, because it's kind of hard to explain, and like I said, I'm a teacher, and I love to educate.
Mm-hmm.
What you do is you go to your sink, you wet a towel. You stick it in the microwave. Take it out, wrap it around your head. That's summer. Take that same towel, put it in the freezer, take it out, wrap it around your head. That's winter.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you describe the humidity in Houston. Because that's exactly,
Yes, absolutely. So, and you know, I've many times have come into Carlsbad at night from Hobbs, and as you come down that hill, you see that beautiful city with all those beautiful lights, and I've never, ever gotten used to it because I love it so much. I love it. It makes me feel how lucky we are to live here.
Well, I don't know if we're lucky to live here, but I think we're fortunate. Because I don't know if luck plays anything into it. I think we are where we are because we're supposed to be there.
Okay, I'll go along with that. I'll go along with that. No problem there.
Well, see, that's the lawyer in me. That's the pragmatist. Luck has nothing to do with
If
it.
I get into trouble, would you still be able to defend me in court?
This is what I tell people. I'm licensed in the state of Texas. I don't know if you caught that the very first time we started talking.
Yes.
That's how good a lawyer I am. Licensed in the state of Texas. That's my caveat.
Okay.
So
If I go into Texas and get in trouble, I can say, I'd like to talk to Marie.
you won't be able to pick me up. I do not any Texas digit. I don't pick it up because it could be one of my relatives asking for legal advice.
Marie, you should be on television. I mean, as a comedian, you are terrific.
No, I'm not. It's my family. I'm like the least funny in my family. You should see we used to have, when we were kids, we would have people come to our house and they'd say, your family's so funny. My husband, when he visits my family, he takes a chair and he looks like this at us. Because we're crazy Frenchmen. And we just love telling a story.
That Creole background, isn't it? Yes, uh-huh.
And I didn't know we were crazy until I left Louisiana and the state of Texas and went to another place. I went to school up in Minnesota for a while. And I didn't think I was funny. I didn't think I had an accent. I do. And
No, you don't have an accent.
they said so in Minnesota.
No, you sound like an Ohioan. That's where I'm from, is Ohio. And
Well, let me tell you, I was just so surprised that, like gumbo. I mean, I was so surprised that people like paid money for gumbo, or that people paid money for beignets. Because I was like, well, doesn't your grandmother make you beignets? Why are you eating crawfish? Crawfish etouffee, that's the leftover tails after the crawfish boil. And people were paying money for it. So my husband loves to eat. So he just thinks I'm just so crazy when I say, why are they paying money for that? That's like leftover stuff.
oh, that is most interesting. I tell you. Well, listen, you've been a wonderful, wonderful
thank
guest
you.
today, and I'm so impressed. But if you see my sister, tell her I send my love with you.
I will. They're such nice people, aren't they?
Oh, they're wonderful.
Salt of the earth.
They really are.
And so are you.
Well, thank you. Gee, I'll have to tell my boss about that.
Good to
Thank
see
you
you.
so much, dear lady.
Okay.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be laughing right out of this front door today. We want to thank you for viewing us today. Marie Johnson, a wonderful guest.
Marie Antoinette.
Marie
Raspberry Johnson.
Antoinette Johnson.
Raspberry. Johnson.
Raspberry. To all of our good viewers, goodbye and good luck. Oh my God.
Oh no!